Mr Speaker.
I call Tim McIndoe.
Mr Speaker, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank is clearly a very significant initiative which has enormous potential to be of great benefit to New Zealand's future economic growth, and therefore I have great pleasure in supporting the measure, and I thank most members and opposition parties for their support of the measure.
Members, this debate is concluded. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Is it? Party votes called for. I'll ask the clerk to conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
32 votes in favour.
Green Party.
14 in favour.
New Zealand First.
12 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
Tokorua tautoko ana.
Act New Zealand.
1 vote in favour.
United Future.
1 vote in favour.
Members, the ayes are 109, the noes are 12. The motion is agreed to.
International Finance Agreements Amendment Bill, first reading.
The question is that the International Finance Agreements Amendment Bill be considered by the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Committee. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, I move that the International Finance Agreements Amendment Bill be reported to the House by 22nd of October 2015 and that the committee have authority to meet at any time while the House is sitting except during oral questions, during any evening on a day on which there's been a sitting of the House and on a Friday in a week which there's been a sitting of the House, despite Standing Orders 191 and 1941B and C. Mr Speaker, there's a couple of reasons for moving this motion. The first is that the bill has, that the proposition has already had extensive and thorough scrutiny from the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Committee as part of the parliamentary treaty examination process, and that committee reported to the House last month. And I'd have to say that that inquiry was held in a constructive and positive atmosphere, and I think the members of the committee noted the efforts of officials representing New Zealand and their efforts in achieving a truly modern multilateral institutional framework for the AIIB. Not a bad effort for a small country which will only hold a fraction of the capital. I might say, Mr Speaker, in that respect, our fleeting moments of influence are now probably over with respect to the AIIB. So, Mr Speaker, that means that a foreshortened Select Committee hearing won't foreshorten the opportunity for Parliament or the public to understand the nature of the bill. In a technical sense, the earlier date would allow New Zealand to join the AIIB as the Articles of Agreement enter into force. And that will enable us to continue to play a constructive and effective role as the bank begins its operations at the end of the year. And I think, consistent with what has been an effort across almost 50 countries to expedite this bill, it's a small part we can play to get it through the Select Committee by the 22nd of October.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Grant Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I do thank the Minister of Finance for that explanation of the thinking behind this motion. However, I want to state at the outset that the practice of the government of coming to this House with truncated Select Committee processes is one that we regard with, I guess the best word is suspicion. Because frankly, it happens too often. And it goes against what is good practice in this Parliament. Of course, there will be reasons from time to time why a piece of legislation needs a short select committee turnaround. It may be a matter of particular urgency that's arisen. It may simply be because the issues involved are ones that are completely non-controversial and have no issues that they need to be considered. But actually that situation will be extremely rare, Mr. Speaker. And once again, I think we've got a piece of legislation here that's getting a truncated select committee process because the government can't manage its own business. So if we look at some of the dates involved in this situation, so the original finalisation of the text was adopted at the 5th Chief Negotiators meeting on the 22nd of May. New Zealand then finalised its signatory to the agreement on the 29th of June. What was happening after that? Why then did it take until August for the Select Committee to be able to give its report to Parliament? The committee met on the 28th of July and then the 20th of August. Just this constant slippage in the process. So you've got an agreement that's actually signed off in May, that New Zealand signs up to in June, that eventually finds its way to the committee towards the end of July, that emerges out of the committee in August, and gets to the Parliament here in September. At some point, did someone in the government benches go, you know what, we actually need to get a wriggle on here if we're going to get this passed by the end of the year? And the Leader of the House, who the last time we did this, which was only in the last sitting day of Parliament, the Leader of the House's management of the legislative program is hopeless, Mr. Speaker. And what happens is that members of Parliament and members of the public are who suffers as a result of that. So I take the point that the Minister has made, that this bill has had a reasonable amount, or the matters covered in this bill have had a reasonable amount of examination by the Foreign Affairs